So hi, Andrea and Nina. First of all, I'd like to thank you very much for spending a bit of your time with us so we can spread the word about you, what you are doing, and then what you can see from what's happening nowadays in UK. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you for the chat.
Okay.
Thank you.
So our first question is, tell us a bit about who you are and a bit of your story so all our readers can know well about you.
Women first.
Okay. Well, we are the joint coordinators of Europe for Scotland, which is a pan-European initiative that was launched. At this point, it's almost 2 years ago. Yeah, we launched with an open letter, which was signed by many famous Europeans, caused quite a stir at the time. And it was an open letter directed at EU leaders asking them to make clear that Scotland would be welcome back in the EU. And yeah, we've been increasing the number of supporters, or like, this is a terrible way of phrasing it. Let me rephrase. So we, ever since this launch, we have been promoting this letter also among the general public. 15,000 Europeans have joined these first 200 intellectuals. And we have a network of ambassadors in many European countries that are helping us to lobby European politicians in the long term. But Andrea, you can elaborate a bit more.
Yes, I mean, I think, I mean, we can say something about ourselves as well as individuals, in the sense that we are both European citizens who have been living in the UK for more than a decade now. I am originally from Italy, and I came to the UK when I was 25, and I started a career as a researcher here, and I lived in Scotland for 3.5 years. I was actually in Scotland, in Glasgow, when the Brexit referendum happened. So I remember very well both the sense of gloom that pervaded many of my friends, including Scottish friends and myself as well. And also the sense that Scotland was clearly against that, both in Glasgow, where I was living, and across the country, indeed. And yeah, then I moved back to England, and I met Nina in Oxford. Yeah, together we were both campaigning against Brexit and also very much paying attention to what was happening in Europe. And I think in the context of this campaign, we can mention that Nina and I, at the beginning of the pandemic, were very worried about what was happening in Europe. We wanted to see a pan-European response to the pandemic. So we wrote an open letter to Angela Merkel, again, signed by a lot of prominent Europeans. And at the time, it was done all a bit in the rush of trying to do something, because we saw that the virus was creating divisions across Europe, and we wanted a united European response. But the idea was kind of to have a pan-European appeal signed by people from across Europe, from all European member states, that could be joined by citizens. And it's a bit the same thing that we try to do with Europe for Scotland, in the sense that the intellectuals launched the campaign in April 2020, were coming from all 27 EU member states and all 4 UK home nations. So in a way, they were representative of cultural figures that were of the diverse identities that we see across Europe, but united in the conviction that Scotland should be allowed to rejoin. And yeah, so we want to put this pan-Europeanism, if you want, at the core of what Europe for Scotland wants to do. So it's not a call that comes from a specific part of Europe or from a specific circle of people, but it's citizens of Europe coming together to say we all see this injustice, we all see this democratic injustice Scotland have been going through, and we all want to do something to help the Scottish friends, to let them know that they're welcome. If they want to come back to the EU, we welcome them with open arms.
Yes, definitely. This is very important. Okay, thank you for that. How you're adapting your campaign after the Supreme Court ruling?
Well, so I guess the first thing to say is that in a way we welcome the ruling because it brings about legal clarity. For far too long, there was no clarity about what was going to happen, what was the legitimacy of a referendum, who should decide. And in a way, the fact that the UK government didn't want the Supreme Court to even say anything, they were trying to prevent them to express a judgment, shows how much they were enjoying this uncertainty and how much they were playing along with this fog of mystery that was surrounding how democracy works in this country, how this Union of Nations work. Now, the Supreme Court has said clearly it's down to Westminster to decide. It's down to London, and now it's clear that London needs to act because there is a clear democratic mandate that everyone can see.
Definitely.
So in that sense, we first want to say to Europeans, there is clarity now. There is a denial of democracy. This denial comes from the UK government in London. And it's part of a broader, if you want, sense that the UK post-Brexit has had an erosion of democratic values, if you want. So there is a sense that a number of laws that have been passed curtailing the right to protest, making more difficult for people to vote, making the evolution more constrained in several ways, including the last one, which was to veto a law passed by the Scottish Parliament. So since Brexit, we have seen the democracy in the UK is less strong. There is a democratic erosion. And this is something that Europeans need to think about when they think about Scotland. So that's the first thing.
I can say that also that in terms of changing our strategy, of course, now with the Supreme Court ruling, the ball is a bit in the English, in the court of the English government. Sorry, I'm like really sick today. I'm not really expressing myself well. But like, so we really want to increase pressure on the UK government by bringing in many of the people across England, Wales, Northern Ireland that are supportive of Scotland's right to determine its own future, and organize events with some of the famous people that are part of our campaign. And just kind of make clear that it is not in the interest of anyone in the UK if democracy is suppressed in Scotland.
Yeah, exactly. We definitely need to keep making our voices heard, because for conservatives and labourers in English, they are definitely like Brexit is done and dusted, and this is not true. And we really need to keep the pressure on.
I also think like the referendum itself, of course, they are worried about the results of the referendum. And I think most people would expect that Scotland would choose independence. But of course, it's not certain. But even the campaign itself would be such an important moment, but also such a dangerous moment for those that wanted to perpetuate the Brexit lie. Because of course, the campaign would very much be about Scotland's future being very different from this world that the UK government has created in general. So any alternative or any chance for them to keep Scotland in the Union would have to be also a complete redrawing of their policies towards Europe.
Definitely. Yes. Okay. And as you know, in the light of the Supreme Court ruling, the Scottish National Party is having a special conference in March. And the National Executive Committee has come with a resolution that offers election-based options if referendum continues being blocked. So the first, that UK general election, where a yes vote is won in a favor of independence, and if this is denied again, a Scottish Parliament election in 2016 as a de facto referendum, with the yes vote being in favor of independence. So what are your thoughts about these options, and which one of them would have the biggest impact in your opinion, and then why?
Well, I mean, the thing is, if the UK has become a prison of nations, then of course you don't have a lot of things you can do. You need to take every chance you have to express your opinion, and if you are denied the chance to have a referendum that the people of Scotland have expressed a clear mandate for, then it's just right that the Scottish government gauges opinion through the constitutional means that are available. You know, we know that the UK government will continue to exert its veto. Then the first available chance for the Scottish people to have a say, it's the next UK general election. And so this is a situation we are in. There is nothing that we can change on these legal constraints. And so we think it's, in a way, it's the next UK general election is the only way to express for the first time the Scottish electorate will in relation to the independence question. And to be honest, there is no doubt that a strong result for pro-independence parties would be an obvious sign that the Scottish people want to renew its mandate for self-determination. It would be seen as such by people who don't have a stake in the process. I'm thinking about democracy scholars across Europe and the world. If they see a clear vote for the SNP and its allies, the Greens and Alba Party, in the next general election, obviously they would interpret that as a strong signal that the Scots are uncomfortable in the Union, and therefore there is a problem there. Then, of course, the problem is what the UK government will interpret of that, and we start from the expectation that everyone has at this stage that the next UK general election will return a Labour government, and of course, until now, no one was expecting the Tories to be democratic in a way, because the way they conducted the Brexit process was always really a suspension of democracy and claiming to be interpreting the will of the people. With Labour, there is a different tradition, obviously. Labour in the past has been more soft on whether or not they were supporting the evolution. But we are now in a new situation for Labour as well, because if you want, Keir Starmer became leader on a certain platform of promises to the Labour members, and he betrayed most of those pledges. So who knows what he will say. My understanding is that he will keep this refusal of accepting the will of the Scottish people, and perhaps he will try to use these constitutional reforms that he wants, these confused plans of constitutional reform that he wants to put forward as an excuse to gain time, to play for time. Yeah. But clearly within the Labour Party, there is a lot of people that understand and that are more sensible in terms of respecting democracy. So we want to talk to these people, to these MPs, to these members of the Labour Party, because many do respect the right of the Scottish people to have a say.
Definitely, it's good to target these people you're talking, like the English MEPs that respect our views. Yeah. Sorry.
No, Nina, you want to add something?
No, I was just going to ask Nina, yes, if she wanted to add anything else.
I'm not necessarily. I guess in general, it's just one thing that needs to be highlighted is that, of course, it's not optimal that a referendum will not take place. in the near, or like in the very foreseeable future. And all either scenario, whether it's a UK election or an election in Scotland, is not as clear of a signal to our other countries in Europe, and not as clear as a binding, I guess, situation for Westminster as well. So in terms of what do we think is better out of these two, I guess it's also complicated, because in general our hunch would probably be that a Scottish election has the advantage of being conducted under Scottish electoral law, which includes like people from 16 years old, and like, you know, so it comes closer to actually giving people a chance to vote that would also vote in a referendum. Having said that, it's in 2026, so it's also very palpable, this exasperation in Scotland, that they rejected Brexit in 2016. It was imposed on them in 2020, and then they should wait till 2026 to, you know, to try to, like, how many businesses will go under until then. And so it's also it's really complicated. But you know, I don't envy the politicians that have to come up with a solution here, because I think whichever solution they choose has problems. But in the end, that's not, you know, they should not necessarily get blamed for that, because the blame should be cast at Westminster for standing in the way of the referendum.
Definitely. Yes. Okay.
On this note, I was also thinking that time is of essence, obviously, and the Scottish parliamentary election in 2026 would conceivably be the first election, the first big electoral test of the new government. So while we really hope that whatever is the new UK government, there will be a different stance on the Scottish question, the Scottish parliamentary election will be the first opportunity for the Scottish people to respond to that new government if they weren't you know, respecting the democratic will. So in a way, our encouragement to people in Scotland is to take every chance they have to express their say without discarding any. And the Scottish parliamentary election 2026 might very well be the one that is more impactful in this sense.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Okay, good to hear that. And do you consider bringing a resolution about Scotland to European Parliament? And if so, would you mind sharing with us what it would be about?
Yes. So our initial plan was to present a report into the benefits of Scotland future EU membership to MEPs ahead of the referendum that was scheduled for 2023. Obviously now the timeline will change, also because we don't know when a referendum will happen, and we know that the European Parliament will be renewed in 2024. So we will consider whether to present a report in this term of the European Parliament or in the next. But the case that we want to make will not change, because what we want to say is that we want to make a positive case for Scotland rejoining, not just from the perspective of Scotland, but from the perspective of the EU, because we think that there are many positive sides for the EU. There is much that the EU can gain from Scotland rejoining, and we are talking about the mutual economic benefits of unraveling Brexit by re-establishing trade links and free movement, and all that comes with it in terms of the benefit for workers and for business, but also in terms of energy security, which is so crucial for the EU at the present stage of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and Scotland could contribute massively to help the EU transition to renewables. And there is also obviously all these important points about research and education, because from a
Yes.
European perspective, having access to Scottish universities, which are some among the best in the world for Erasmus students or for students to come to study, will be very important. And likewise, the access for Scottish university to the Horizon program will be extremely important. And it's so there is a lot of dimensions which it would be better for the EU to rehab Scotland, which also include the political side of things, if you want, because obviously across Europe there were minorities in all countries which were supportive of Brexit because they were Eurosceptic, in many times with links to Russia. And politically, it would be a massive defeat for them and a massive win for the European project.
Yes.
And it's also worth mentioning that after the invasion of Ukraine, there has been a lot of attention of the EU and Brussels towards the Eastern Front. And in a way, it would be important also to have Scotland rejoining from the West to keep a balance and to maintain European Union that is inclusive on all sides, on all fronts, and doesn't shift its center of gravity too much.
I think you're doing a wonderful work, and I really wish that it goes stronger and stronger, and then we have a good result by the end, because this is all fundamental, and it's a shame what's happening with Scotland now. So I wish you all the luck, and we'll definitely do everything we can do to help these voices to keep going.
Thank you so much.
So shall we mention something about the cultural work as well, Nini?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Andrea, but I feel that my voice, I'm really struggling with coughing at the moment.
Okay, no, I mean, if you want, I can say this, but in relation to the report as well, one of the things that we want to say is also that the European project is not just economy, it's not just politics, it's also an identity that we are shared because of culture and history, if you want. And one thing that I really want to say to the MEPs is that this is an historical moment for the European project. And if you look at history, Scotland has always been a proud European nation. There has been always Scottish influence in European histories, Scottish ties with European countries. This is also the core of the argument that we made in a recent film that we produced with Billy Kay. And there is a nice podcast with Nina interviewing Billy about that. And at the end of the day, Scotland should be part of the European project because it has always been at the heart of Europe. That's what we want to say. And very final point, that in this report, we also want to have the voices of citizens. It's not just going to be about facts and statistics. It's going to be about people and young Scots, young Europeans, European citizens that live in Scotland. Voices that weren't heard very much in the Brexit referendum, but that, can make the best compelling case for Scotland's European future.
Definitely. Yes, that's brilliant. Thank you very much indeed.